Well, when the show first started, there was a character that was played by Jaimee Foxworth,
Yes.
which was the younger sister, Judy Winslow.
Yeah.
She was 13 years old when they erased her. One day she was on television every Friday night. Millions of people watched her. She played Judy Winslow, the youngest daughter on Family Matters, one of the biggest sitcoms in America. And then, without warning, without explanation, without even a goodbye episode, she disappeared. The character just stopped existing. The show never mentioned her again. The family that had 3 children suddenly had 2, and America didn't ask questions. America didn't demand answers. America just kept watching, kept laughing at Urkel's jokes, kept buying the merchandise, and nobody seemed to notice that a little black girl had been erased from existence. Her name is Jaimee Foxworth, and what happened to her after Hollywood threw her away is one of the most devastating, most shameful, and most ignored scandals in television history. This is not a story about a sitcom. This is a story about what happens when an industry built on family values destroys a child and then profits from watching her fall. This is a story about a 13-year-old girl who was told she wasn't valuable enough to keep on a TV show and then spent years believing she wasn't valuable enough to exist. This is a story about desperation, exploitation, and a system that discards children and then acts surprised when those children make desperate choices to survive. And this is a story about the media that turned her pain into entertainment, her trauma into headlines, and her lowest moments into reality TV spectacle. Jaimee Foxworth didn't just disappear from Family Matters. She was erased, forgotten, abandoned, and when she was at her most vulnerable, at her most broken, at her most desperate, the same industry that threw her away opened another door, a door that promised money, attention, and a way to feel wanted again. But that door led to a place she could never fully escape, a place that would define her for the rest of her life, a place that would give tabloids endless material and late-night comedians easy punchlines: the adult film industry. This is the story Hollywood doesn't want you to remember, the story of how Family Matters, a show that claimed to celebrate black families, destroyed a black child, and the story of how Jaimee Foxworth survived what was designed to destroy her. Don't forget to hit follow, because what comes next will make you question every feel-good family sitcom you've ever loved and force you to ask a question nobody wanted to answer. How many children has Hollywood erased? How many Judys disappeared while America laughed and never noticed? And how many of them are still out there, still suffering, still carrying scars from an industry that used them and threw them away? September 22nd, 1989. ABC launches Family Matters. It's a spin-off of Perfect Strangers, centered around Harriet Winslow, a character who had been a supporting player on that show. The premise is simple. The Winslows are a middle-class black family living in Chicago. Carl Winslow, a police officer, is the father. Harriet, his wife, is a strong working mother, and they have 3 children: Eddie, the oldest son, Laura, the middle child, and Judy, the youngest daughter, played by Jaimee Foxworth. She's adorable. She's talented. She's exactly what you'd expect from a sitcom kid. Cute one-liners, big expressions, the typical annoying little sister energy that makes family sitcoms work. And for the first few seasons, Family Matters is exactly what it's supposed to be: a grounded family sitcom about a black family dealing with normal problems: work, school, relationships, money. It's warm, it's funny. It's the kind of show that's designed to make families feel good about sitting down together on Friday nights. But then in episode 12 of season 1, everything changes. A character shows up who was supposed to appear once. Just once. A nerdy neighbor kid named Steve Urkel. High-pitched voice, thick glasses, suspenders pulled up to his chest. Clumsy, annoying, obsessed with Laura. The audience loses their minds. The reaction is so massive that ABC makes him a regular character. And week by week, season by season, Steve Urkel takes over the show. By season 3, Family Matters isn't about the Winslow family anymore. It's about Urkel. The episodes aren't about Carl's job or Harriet's struggles or the kids growing up. They're about Urkel's inventions, Urkel's transformations, Urkel's science fiction adventures. The show that started as a grounded family sitcom becomes a cartoon. and the Winslow family becomes background decoration in Urkel's circus. And that's when the producers start making cuts. The show is expensive. Urkel is bringing in the ratings and the merchandise sales, so they need to trim the budget. And one of the first things they cut is Judy Winslow. After season 4, she just disappears. No explanation, no send-off episode, no mention of her going to boarding school or moving away or anything. She's just gone. The Winslows have 3 kids in one episode, and 2 kids in the next. And the show acts like Judy Winslow never existed. It's one of the most famous cases of what's called the Chuck Cunningham syndrome, named after a character on Happy Days, who also disappeared without explanation. But this isn't just a TV trivia footnote. This is a real child, Jaimee Foxworth. And what happened to her after she was erased is where the real story begins. Jaimee was 13 years old when Family Matters let her go. 13. She had spent 4 years on one of the biggest shows on television. She had been part of a family, both on screen and off. She had a routine, a purpose, a reason to wake up every day. And then it was gone. Just gone. Years later, Jaimee talked about what that felt like. She said she didn't understand why it happened. She thought it was her fault. She thought she wasn't good enough. She thought she had done something wrong, because nobody explained it to her. Nobody sat her down and said, "This is a business decision. This has nothing to do with your talent." They just stopped calling, and a 13-year-old girl was left to figure out on her own why she had been thrown away. The psychological damage of that moment is hard to overstate. Imagine being a child and believing that your value as a human being is tied to whether or not a TV network wants you. Imagine being told, through actions if not words, that you're disposable, that you don't matter, that the world moved on without you and nobody even noticed. And it wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Jaimee's family had been depending on her income from Family Matters. When that income disappeared, they struggled. Bills piled up. Opportunities dried up, and Jaimee, watching her family suffer, carried the guilt of that too. She felt responsible. She felt like she had failed them. And as she got older, as she tried to find work, she kept running into the same wall. Hollywood didn't want her. She auditioned. She tried. But she was the girl from Family Matters, the girl who got written out, the girl who wasn't valuable enough to keep, and nobody wanted to take a chance on her. So she fell into depression. Deep, crushing depression. She struggled with self-worth. She didn't know who she was anymore. She had spent her childhood being Judy Winslow, and when that was taken away, she didn't know how to be Jaimee Foxworth. And that's when the desperation set in. When you're young, when you're broke, when you feel worthless, when every door is closed, when it seems like the world has decided you don't matter, you start looking for any way to feel valuable again. Any way to survive. Any way to prove you still exist. And in the early 2000s, Jaimee made a decision that she would spend the rest of her life regretting. She entered the adult film industry. Now, let's be very clear about something. This wasn't a story of liberation. This wasn't empowerment. This wasn't a woman making a free, informed choice from a place of strength. This was a young woman in her early 20s, broken by an industry that had used her as a child and then discarded her, desperate for money, desperate to feel wanted, desperate to matter to someone, anyone. And the adult film industry saw that desperation and exploited it. Jaimee has spoken openly about this in interviews. She said that at the time, it felt like her only option. She needed money. She needed to help her family. She needed to feel like she had value. And the adult film industry offered all of that. They told her she was beautiful. They told her she was desired. They paid her. And for a moment, it felt like relief. But that relief didn't last, because what the adult film industry doesn't tell you, what they can never prepare you for, is the cost. Not the financial cost, the human cost, the cost to your sense of self, the cost to your mental health, the cost to how the world sees you and how you see yourself. Once you make that choice, once you cross that line, there's no going back. You can leave the industry. You can change your life. But the internet is forever. The footage is forever. The judgment is forever. And for Jaimee, who had already been erased once, who had already been told she didn't matter, this became a second erasure, because now she wasn't Jaimee Foxworth, the talented actress. She wasn't even Judy Winslow, the little girl from Family Matters. She was the child star who did porn. That became her identity. That became how the world defined her. And the media loved it. Tabloids ran headlines. Family Matters star in adult films. From sitcom to XXX. Late-night comedians made jokes, websites wrote articles, and reality TV came calling, because there's a whole genre of television built around exploiting former child stars. Shows that parade people who were famous as kids and then fell on hard times, pretending to offer help while actually just putting their pain on display for ratings. Jaimee appeared on some of these shows. She talked about her struggles. She talked about her regrets. And the producers packaged it as redemption television. But it wasn't redemption. It was exploitation. Again, it was the same industry that had erased her as a child, now profiting from her pain as an adult. And through all of this, Jaimee was struggling with addiction. Drugs, alcohol, the kind of self-medication that happens when you're carrying trauma you don't know how to process. When you've been told your whole life that you don't have value. When every door you knock on gets slammed in your face, when the only attention you get is people mocking you or judging you or using you for entertainment. But here's what nobody talks about. Here's what gets buried under the headlines and the jokes and the judgment. There were other options. Even in her darkest moment, even when it felt like the adult film industry was the only door open, there were other paths. They were harder. They were slower. They didn't promise quick money or instant validation, but they existed. She could have reached out to organizations that help former child actors transition to other careers. She could have pursued education, training in other fields. She could have moved away from Los Angeles, started over somewhere new, built a life outside of entertainment. Were those options easy? No. Were they guaranteed to work? No. Would they have required support, resources, and help from people who should have been there for her in the first place? Absolutely, but they existed, and the tragedy is that when you're young, when you're desperate, when you've been abandoned by the system, you don't always see those options. You see the door that's open, the one that's easy, the one that promises immediate relief from the pain. And that's the lesson that needs to be screamed from every rooftop. That's the message that could save someone else from making the same choice. The adult film industry is not a career. It's not empowerment. It's not a solution to financial problems. It's exploitation. And the people who profit from it know exactly what they're doing. They target vulnerable people, young people, people who feel like they have no other options, people who are desperate to feel valued. And they offer them something that feels like a lifeline, but is actually a trap. Because once you're in, once the footage exists, once the internet has you, there's no erasing it. You can rebuild your life, you can find healing, but you can never undo it. And the price you pay, the psychological toll, the stigma, the way it defines you forever, is not worth any amount of money they could offer. Jaimee Foxworth knows this now. She's said it in interviews. She's been brutally honest about her regret, about how she wishes she had made different choices, about how the adult film industry wasn't the salvation she thought it would be. It was another form of exploitation, another system using her body, her image, her vulnerability to make money while leaving her with nothing but trauma. And here's what makes it even more painful. The adult film industry didn't make her rich. It didn't solve her financial problems. It gave her temporary money and permanent consequences. And when she tried to leave, when she tried to rebuild her life, the stigma followed her everywhere. Job applications, relationships, every Google search of her name, every time someone recognized her, the judgment, the whispers, the way people looked at her, not as a human being who made a desperate choice in a moment of pain, but as a punchline, a cautionary tale, a piece of gossip. But Jaimee survived, and that's important to say. Because this story doesn't end in destruction, it ends in survival, in healing, in the slow, painful work of rebuilding a life after the systems designed to protect you have failed at every turn. Jaimee eventually got help. She went to treatment for her addiction. She sought therapy for the trauma. She started speaking publicly about her experiences, not to sensationalize them, but to warn others, to tell young people, especially young women, especially young black women who feel invisible and worthless and desperate, that the choices you make in moments of desperation will follow you forever. that there are always other options, even when you can't see them, that asking for help is not weakness, that your value is not determined by whether Hollywood wants you or whether men desire you or whether the world pays attention to you. She rebuilt her life away from the cameras. She focused on her mental health. She reconnected with family. She found work outside of entertainment, and she forgave herself, which might be the hardest part of all. Because when you've been carrying shame for years, when the world has spent decades judging you, when every mistake you made as a young person has been turned into public spectacle, learning to forgive yourself is an act of radical courage. And Jaimee did it. She's still here. She's still fighting. She's still trying to make sure that what happened to her doesn't happen to someone else. And that matters. That's the real story, not the headlines, not the scandal, not the salacious details that tabloids love to print. The real story is survival. It's resilience. It's a woman who was erased twice by Hollywood and by her own choices, and who clawed her way back to something resembling peace. But we can't talk about Jaimee's survival without talking about the systems that tried to destroy her. Because this isn't just her story. This is a story about an industry that eats children and spits them out. Family Matters was a show that claimed to represent family values. It was marketed as wholesome. It was supposed to be safe. It was the kind of show parents let their kids watch without worry. But behind the scenes, it was a business, a machine designed to make money. And when Jaimee Foxworth stopped being profitable, when her character didn't serve the Urkel-focused storyline anymore, they threw her away. No severance package, no transition plan, no support system to help a 13-year-old child navigate sudden unemployment and the psychological devastation of being told she wasn't good enough. They just erased her. And then they moved on. The show kept running for 5 more seasons. The cast kept working. The network kept making money. And nobody checked on Jaimee. Nobody asked if she was okay. Nobody made sure she had what she needed to survive. And when she made desperate choices years later, when she ended up in the adult film industry, when she struggled with addiction and depression, Hollywood acted shocked. Tabloids wrote about the tragic fall of a child star as if they hadn't contributed to it, as if the same industry that discarded her wasn't now profiting from her pain by turning it into content. Reality shows about washed-up celebrities, articles about where child stars are now, documentaries about the dark side of fame, all of it making money off of Jaimee's suffering while offering her nothing but judgment. That's the system. That's how it works. It uses you when you're profitable. It throws you away when you're not. And then it profits from your downfall. And the cruelest part? It blames you. It acts like your choices happened in a vacuum, like you weren't a child who was abandoned, like you weren't a young woman who was desperate, like the industry that failed you at every turn had no responsibility for what happened next. So here's the lesson. Here's what Jaimee Foxworth's story should teach every person watching this video. If you are young, if you are struggling, if you feel worthless, if you feel invisible, if it seems like the world has decided you don't matter, please hear this. You have value. Your value is not determined by whether you're on TV or whether you're famous or whether anyone is paying attention to you. Your value is inherent. You matter because you exist. And the choices you make in moments of desperation will follow you for the rest of your life. The adult film industry is not a solution. It's not empowerment. It's not a way to feel valued. It's exploitation. And the people who profit from it don't care about you. They care about what they can take from you. And once they take it, once the footage exists, you can't get it back. There are always other options. Always. They might be harder. They might be slower. They might require asking for help from people or organizations or resources you don't even know exist yet. But they are there. Reach out to family. Reach out to friends. Reach out to organizations that help people in crisis. There are hotlines. There are non-profits. There are people whose entire job is helping young people who feel like they have nowhere to turn. Use them. Ask for help. It's not weakness. It's survival. And if you're watching this, and you've already made choices you regret, if you're carrying shame about your past, if you feel like you can never escape what you've done, hear this too. You are not your worst moment. You are not defined by the choices you made when you were desperate. You can heal, you can rebuild, you can forgive yourself. It won't be easy, it won't be fast, but it's possible. Jaimee Foxworth is proof. She survived, she rebuilt, she found peace. And if she can do it after everything the world threw at her, so can you. And to the industry, to Hollywood, to the networks and producers and executives who continue to use children and then discard them, hear this. You are responsible. You don't get to erase kids from TV shows and then act surprised when those kids struggle. You don't get to profit from their childhood and then abandon them in adolescence. You don't get to turn their pain into content and then pretend you had nothing to do with it. Jaimee Foxworth's story is on you. Every child star who spirals into addiction, into poverty, into exploitation, that's on you, because you built a system that treats children as products, and when those products stop being profitable, you throw them away, and then you profit from watching them fall. That's not entertainment. That's evil. And it needs to stop. Family Matters ran for 9 years. It had 215 episodes. It made millions of dollars. It's remembered as a nostalgic piece of 90s television. People talk about Urkel's catchphrases and the TGIF lineup and Friday night family viewing. But nobody talks about Judy. Nobody talks about Jaimee. Nobody remembers that a little black girl was erased from that show and then spent years being destroyed by the aftermath. And that's the real scandal. Not that she made mistakes, not that she ended up in the adult film industry. The real scandal is that an industry built on family values destroyed a child and nobody cared. The real scandal is that we all kept watching, kept laughing, kept consuming, and never asked what happened to the little girl who disappeared. The real scandal is that Hollywood has done this hundreds of times, to hundreds of children, and we let it happen, because we care more about our entertainment than we care about the people who create it. So when you think about Family Matters now, don't just remember the laughs. Don't just remember Urkel. Remember Judy. Remember Jaimee. Remember that she was a child who was erased. Remember that she was a young woman who was desperate. Remember that she made choices that haunt her. And remember that she survived. Because her survival is the only part of this story that Hollywood didn't script. The only part they didn't control. The only part that proves that even when the system tries to destroy you, you can still choose to live. You can still choose to heal. You can still choose to matter. Not because Hollywood says so, but because you decide it for yourself. And that's the lesson, that's the message, that's what Jaimee Foxworth's story should burn into the heart of every person who hears it. You matter. You always have other options. And the systems that try to destroy you don't get to write the end of your story. You do. If this story impacted you, if it made you see the cost of entertainment differently, if it could help someone avoid making the same desperate choices, don't stay silent. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep telling the stories that Hollywood wants buried. Because sometimes the most important stories aren't the ones that make us feel good. They're the ones that force us to see the truth. And the truth about Jaimee Foxworth is this. She deserved better, from Family Matters, from Hollywood, from the media, from all of us. She deserved to be protected, to be valued, to be remembered as more than a punchline. And maybe if we remember her story, if we tell it honestly, if we learn from it, we can make sure the next child who gets erased doesn't have to walk the same path. That's the only way this story means anything. If it saves someone, if it changes something, if it makes us care more about the children behind the characters than we do about the characters themselves. All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on historical research and publicly available information, including Jaimee Foxworth's own public interviews about her experiences. This video examines the cultural impact and legacy of Family Matters, the entertainment industry's treatment of child actors, and the real human cost of erasure and exploitation. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of self-harm, addiction, or exploitation, please reach out. You are not alone. Help is available.